Welcome back to the Filmistines, the double feature podcast. Join us as we unravel the interwoven experience of the continuous conversation of cinema. Take part in pairing movies with their cursed counterparts, movies that share DNA, or even pairing questionable duos by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines. We offer tiers at the $1, $5, and $20 level, where the $5 tier will grant the ability to request films to further the discussion. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready to join the 100-year conversation. This is the Filmistines, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're an experience.
They're an experience.
All around you. And welcome back to another episode of the Filmistines. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today I'm joined by my quiet friend, Lucy. Remember, we post every Monday and Friday on free feeds, and every other Wednesday on Patreon for Patreon exclusive episodes. Some recent episodes include Your Name, Akira, Inside Out 2, Lady Bird, I Saw the TV Glow, and The Watchers. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come request a movie, come subscribe, rate us on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much.
Are you stressed and filled with anxiety like I am? Maybe in a bit of pain from that car accident you had a few years ago? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Hempville CBD, has us covered. They have the highest quality products created by chemists and doctors. Hempville carries everything from CBD to THC dispensary grade without those despicable dispensary prices. Order your Delta 8, 9 edibles and vapes along with the THCA flower and get free shipping when you spend $50 or more at hempvillecbd.com. Check out the link in the description for more details.
But today we will be discussing Michael Sarnoski's 2024 film, A Quiet Place, Day 1. And I'm just going to let you in on the little bit of a roller coaster I had with this film before it was released to theaters. It was announced, and later it was said that Michael Sarnoski, the guy who did Pig, the great Pig with Nick Cage,
Great film.
was directing it. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. But as we got closer to the release, I was like, you know what? Day 1. We already had Day 1 with John's Part 2. You know, in snippets, they were the best part of that film, of course. So I became very wary of what's to come, and I was like, what does this matter? Why do I care about A Quiet Place Day 1? Is this Michael selling out? Like, okay, you make one great movie and it's going to sell out immediately? I guess it happens. But I'm happy to report back that this is the best A Quiet Place out of the 3 so far. We have a 4th one, I suppose, next year, if everything goes according to plan. Quiet Place Part 3, I guess, right? Directed by John. Day 1 works on some interesting levels. It reminded me of the recent Spider-Man movie, the recent animated one, Across the Spider-Verse, I think, where that film is excellent on the back of the first one. This film is at its best if you have seen the first one, A Quiet Place Part 1. And Day 1's much more than I could have ever hoped to get out of a movie like this. We take this excellent monster from a previous monster movie and all of a sudden make it the backdrop for an individual coming to terms with their death, their inevitable death by cancer, and going on this Make-A-Wish adventure. This movie is beautiful in its storytelling, in its visual language, especially between our 2 main characters, Eric and Sam.
Yes.
And Frodo, of course. The presence of New York is such a funny thing to happen in A Quiet Place film because it screams that sequel stink where they're sitting in a boardroom and they say, A Quiet Place, but in the loudest city on the planet. I get it. That kind of junk food is right up my alley. And it no doubt exercises the premise to the biggest degree possible in this world, but it only serves as that backdrop for a much more intimate story, and that's awesome. So I was very surprised by A Quiet Place Day 1, even though Michael was at the helm of it. Movies like Pig don't happen very often, especially because it was his directorial debut, right? But I'm happy to announce that Michael Sarnoski has entered my favorite directors. You have to have 2 movies at least, right? For someone to be your favorite director.
I think more, but I'll give it to you. Especially since Pig is so good that on that alone, I would give it to you.
Because I feel that way about Ari Aster and Jordan Peele. It's like, man, and Robert Eggers. These guys only have a handful of movies. 3 movies, I think, each, actually. But they're all so good, and I can't get over it. But I'm very, very interested in what you think of this very different A Quiet Place film. What do you think of A Quiet Place Day One, my man?
I'm really glad you liked it because I was scared you weren't. I don't know how big of a fan you were of the first and second one.
I like the first one quite a bit. The second one's okay.
Yeah.
But the first one's almost in that vein of a perfect horror movie where it's, 90 minutes and it's just punchy all the way through and doesn't overstay its welcome. And I can't really ask more.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I'm so glad you liked it. This is probably the best movie of the year for me. And this franchise almost feel like one of those movies that I really love where the main character doesn't use or can't use one of their senses, like don't breathe or hush, where we have this element of losing our ability to speak.
I like that you say that because it reminds me of that so-called stereotypical nightmare people have of going to class or something naked, where there's just something terrifying about something so dramatically off. And you're obviously very vulnerable and...
Yeah, nothing more vulnerable than being naked in school or not being able to cough, But we have that element, and now we're adding monsters. We're adding these aliens. So, of course, I love it even more. I also feel like these Quiet Place movies are a modern spin on silent films. Especially rewatching the first one, I forgot how little dialogue that movie actually had. This movie has a little bit more dialogue, but that's only in the beginning before the invasion. But I really love it. I love the idea here of grief and acceptance, whether you're a cancer patient, whether it's a family member dying, or an alien invasion. We all need to deal with our losses and keep surviving, whether that's as little as waking up every morning to actually, running for your life, fighting for your life. But I love that idea here. This movie had great jump scares. I mean, I lost count how many times I jump scared. There were some really good ones that I was not waiting for, and I love them. And I love the simple storytelling here, and you said it earlier, just how beautiful it was and how intimate it was. I mean, the storytelling in this movie was phenomenal. And for a film with barely any dialogue, I really have to give a shout out to the score, the sound design, and the performances. Because by the end of this movie, I was just bawling, and I was trying to hold my tears from just this warm story that this movie managed to tell. And even now I'm getting teary-eyed because, oh my god, it was so good.
It's a surprisingly powerful film.
Yes.
For not being all that deep beyond its visual language. Because I think some of its visual language is where the mastery sets in.
How did you feel about giving our main character cancer and what seems terminal, right? If she was in hospice?
Yeah, no doubt.
It almost mutes the survivalness of this movie, unlike the first one where it's John protecting his family.
Yeah, the first one is a proper survival movie. They've got some things figured out. They're making this work. They've lived this way for a year and a half. It's happening. Here, we're immediately presented with Sam, a young person dying of cancer, on her deathbed. And so you're immediately like, that's weird. It's weird. Why do we care? Why are we gonna care? You're dead anyways.
She must obviously not be your main character.
And I think it's really genius storytelling because it immediately starts to set you up for, okay, this is more than a survival movie. This is more than a horror movie. This is more than a catastrophe movie happening in New York. This is got a little juice. And we're introduced to Sam in such a way that it's very clear that she's upset. She's really bitter about how unfair the world is. She hates the situation she's in. She's really not okay. And then we head to New York, the island. And this is when things become pretty interesting. We go to this play. We can talk a little bit more about that. Not so important to the major through line, I think. But then we have this moment where the aliens crash land. Everything just turns to dust, basically. And there's a moment very early on where she's completely covered in cement. And she has this ghostly, white presence. It reminded me of Kratos, who's also dead on the inside.
Genius.
This is when it was clear to me that this is not a story of dealing with these critters, these aliens, and how to operate in New York City, the loudest place on the planet, whatever. This is the story of someone who is dying and is in intolerable spiritual pain. And then we spend the next, 70, 60 minutes watching Sam come to terms with that. And this is where the genius, I think, sets in. We have this backdrop of the Quiet Place aliens representing that pain and imminent death. So we all of a sudden have this dualistic story happening. Yes, we literally have an apocalyptic sized event wiping out humanity, but it's only there, as far as Sam's story goes, it's only there to represent the painful conclusion. Because I'm not sure at what point it was in the movie, but I said to myself, man, we're going to end up at a church, in a church, around religious people in some form. Which kind of makes sense because we have this rapture-oriented apocalyptic type thing. Seems a natural fit for these fallen angel-esque things coming out of the sky. But more importantly, we need that church setting. We need the presence of God to indicate how close Sam is to dying. And that's basically it in a nutshell. We just get great visual storytelling to wrap it up. That Sam comes to terms with her death and the death of the world.
What a great parallel.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I saw people not enjoying the lack of use of New York. But I thought it was awesome because we take something as big as New York and make it feel so small following Sam because this is Sam's story. I thought it was visually on point. Thought that was a little strange to see.
Why? Because we're tired of New York movies? Like what?
No,
what's
New
the
York's a
reason?
character to a lot of people.
It symbolizes something?
Yeah.
Ah.
But when her face turned white with the cement, that's when I knew Michael was one of my favorite directors. I was like, this is it. He's 2 for 2. This is going to be a great movie.
Yeah, no doubt. I didn't even really get that symbolism until you said that. And oh my God, that almost makes the moment where she's wiping it away more impactful because that's when she decided, I'm going to go get some pizza. I'm going to go to the one place that meant everything to me. I mean, it was awesome. Michael really knows how to be sentimental. He's definitely on the radar.
One thing I like about Michael is he understands how important food is to us. If his next movie doesn't involve food in a significant way, I'm going to riot.
And back to the point about this movie taking place in New York, it's almost crucial to start in a city like New York when we already had a, quote, another day one, but that was more of a rural area, maybe more of a suburban area. And now we're getting the perspective of a city, a loud city, the city that never sleeps or something.
Yeah, I think that's what they say.
So I was totally enamored with it taking place in New York.
I know the number of people was just powerful in its own right. The quietness of New York is powerful in its own right.
That's eerie as fuck. You see in movies all the time how people, can't sleep unless they hear the car alarms and the noises and the shouting. That's what New York is known for. It's loudness. To really give that impact of a silent New York. Like, can you imagine that?
It's kind of funny, this movie, because it requires some of that baggage to bring with you that New York is that loud city. You've seen New York 1,000 times in 1,000 different pieces of movies or whatever, shows, in ways people talk about it. And also that baggage I mentioned earlier of knowing the threat of the aliens.
Yeah, I saw quite a few people also being upset about the lore behind these aliens. Why did they come here? Who are they? I mean, really just anything about them. And
People want the lore?
yes, people wanted the lore. People wanted to know what's up with these aliens. We didn't get anything really in the other movies about them. So this movie would have been a great time to learn more about them, but it wouldn't have fit with this story that was trying to be told here. Because this isn't a story about the aliens, and this is also a prequel. We would know less about the aliens in this movie than we would in A Quiet Place Part 2. This was not the time and place. And I mean, I understand. I'm also curious. Did they even mean to land on Earth? Like, what is going on? It looks like they just attack people. They don't really eat the humans or the things that's making the loud noises, from what I could tell. They just like to slash it and beat it up. Like are us humans or anything that makes a sound just annoying to them? And it's like mosquitoes, So I don't know. I'm also curious, but I'm not mad at all that someone didn't try to explain this.
Yeah, the exposition and lore thing on the bad guy is always hard to stomach in some way, because a lot of times you have a really developed bad guy and you want more of it, and they are the coolest character. And sometimes they simply cannot be explained.
Right, sometimes they represent something else.
I mean, on that note, there's almost nothing to explain, because there's something bigger here that is maybe going over someone's head. Maybe something metaphorical or what have you. But don't we see how less is more in a lot of these situations with building tension and true fear?
The suspense, yes. Great tactic.
Because we did learn something about them. We learned that they can't open their little fucking heads underwater. They'll drown or whatever, or get poisoned, or whatever happens when they open their head. They die. We learned something about them.
That's true.
So maybe if there's going to be several of these movies, we do drip feed what these aliens are all about. Because the moment we give these aliens any reason, any sense of logic, outside of some kind of impulse, like mosquitoes flocking to a bloody peck, I think a lot of the magic is going to disappear.
Yes, I agree. Especially with Michael's idea here of the power of the human connection.
Yeah, totally. It would have completely annihilated this film if we got any sense of how to deal with these things, because Sam's experience here is impossible to understand. It's something you just need to deal with and meet it on your terms at the best you can.
Yeah, well said.
If the opposite was true, there may be this implication that Sam can continue to fight it.
Some kind of hope.
Yeah, and there's times where that might be antithetical and toxic to the situation you're dealing with. And I mean, when you die, does it even matter, I guess? But closing that door when you're ready it's powerful stuff, at least visually and in a poetic sense and storytelling. Not to say suicide is an answer, but
cinematically beautiful, at least.
Yeah.
Because there's no doubt I've thought about, is that really what they feel? Or is, if I'm ever in that situation, am I going to deal with it like that? But at least in a movie, it's very well done. And hopeful. Maybe that's not how you were going to feel, but because you watched whatever movie, you will now have the guts.
Sure, and there's something very esoteric in it by nature and transcendent in that what's happening on screen isn't literally also important, but the torment and pain and coming to terms with X, Y, and Z is what's important.
The feels are important.
I'm just going to say I can't believe how good the end is with Sam and Eric going to the pizza joint, to the jazz joint. Because when you hit that beat of them going to the pizza joint that her and her dad used to go to, and it's all fucked up, and she's like bummed out, they go through it so quick, it's just like, man, that sucks on a deep-ass level of you not being able to do anything about it. It's totally out of your control. Much like everything that's happening in this movie, and much like the hand that's been dealt to Sam. But then we have this crazy surge of humanity come in with Eric and trying to like make someone comfortable before the end.
Yeah, like giving them a dignified death. Like your shift family does, you know?
Yeah.
It's so good. The star of this movie for me was Frodo. You don't see a lot of cats in films, but especially you don't see a cat have so much screen time. I love that he was an emotional support animal. Almost like this prepped him for the survival of the end of the world. Being a good kitty, being a good boy. It was the best movie I have ever seen a kitty cat in.
If you just Google what cats represent spiritually, you'll find that the cat spirit reminds you to trust your instincts and to listen to your subtle messages from your soul. Together you explore the mysteries and enigmatic aspects of your being. The cat spirit guides you to uncover hidden truths and to embrace the parts of yourself that may have been overlooked or misunderstood.
You're telling me the cat is a symbol? People had a real hard time understanding the cat. Unless we're just having fun with it. Because a lot of the comments I saw were, how would a cat even survive this world? Or how would a cat stay still long enough?
Those are the questions why we don't give too many answers of why the world is the way it is. Because when we provide too much exposition, it builds this case for idiots to ask stupid ass questions. Because the cat thriving in this world is not the fucking point.
Yeah, then they proceed to say, well, I guess if we can have an alien invasion, we can have a cat stay still. It's like, yeah, you're not wrong.
That's like those idiots saying, I don't like this movie because that could never happen.
Yes. But then their favorite movie is like this crazy sci-fi 30 years in the future.
Yeah.
I loved it. I wish that in her letter at the end, and I'm sure we'll talk about the end in a little bit, but I wish that her letter at the end would have named him, would have said, please take care of Frodo, because she said, please take care of my cat. I just wish we would have named him. That would have felt more powerful and sentimental, giving him a name. I don't know if we actually said his name in the film, because I didn't know his name was Frodo until I saw the wiki page, but we do have very limited dialogue, so I must have missed it if we did.
Yeah, I think the only time that it's mentioned is when she's holding him at the puppet show and that little boy is looking behind the seat at the cat, and she's like, hey, this is Frodo. And then the guy, the dad is like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. But I just wish that would have been included at the end. I was already bawling then, but if she would have named it, like, please take care of Frodo, like, giving him an identity, I would have lost it. I probably would have walked out with tears.
There's something even more symbolic about that cat having the name Frodo. I'm not familiar enough with Lord of the Rings to know what that is, but that's very clear to me there is. Someone's getting something a little more out of this than me.
Yeah, because I think Sam is also a character.
Yeah, Sam is Frodo's best friend.
Aww. Maybe it's just as simple as that.
It might be, yeah.
Aww, that's so cute. I'm not familiar with it either, so there was definitely something there. Michael was having fun with it. One of the things that bothered me a little bit walking out of the movie theater was, why did they bomb the bridges? Maybe more on a plot discrepancy here. I know it was to prevent the monsters from leaving the island, but I wasn't too sure on what they meant by that. If New York got attacked first because of how loud it is, if that was the main attraction, but did they crash land somewhere else, or did they manage to leave the island?
Those are good questions, good concerns. These are the kind of questions that you don't want to provide too many answers for because it opens up new stupid questions. This is not a stupid question because they need to help localize the threat, obviously, for the story. And I was thinking, hell yeah, I'd bomb those bridges. Because this is obviously a major threat for a place like New York. And so they're thinking, okay, maybe we can contain this because there's clearly thousands right here. Okay, they can't get in the water. they can't swim. We can contain this to some degree because we do see at the very beginning of this film, day 1 and part 2, that they crashed landed in several places. Part 1 and part 2 take place in upstate New York, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Which makes sense, I guess, for the valleys and stuff. Where else is that? And tons of them obviously got off of the island because a lot of New York is not Manhattan, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm not too familiar with New York geography. There's got to be some escape holes. But yeah, it left me very curious, especially knowing that we're going to have sequels.
It seems like some exposition of these aliens is inevitable, especially with a part 3, some kind of dealing with them on some more sophisticated level. You know, at the end of part 2, they end up on an island, right? What do you think of that little alien crash landing space that Eric stumbles into when he's after Frodo at some point?
Yeah, that sequence almost felt off because we don't really get a lot of the aliens, and now we're seeing their crash site. Maybe that's where they feed if they're not feeding on humans. The kitty cat was licking it, so he's about to become superhuman, turn into one of them. I don't know. But it was pretty cool visually.
That did remind me, we also learned that they can communicate with each other.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
So maybe they're a little more advanced than mosquitoes.
No, we're the mosquitoes to them.
Oh.
For sure. But yeah, that was a good sequence. I really liked that the cat got up on the railing and was just watching. If that's not something a cat would do, I don't know what it would do. And when the aliens started crawling under them, I almost thought that cat was about to get on its back. Just because that's something my cat does, and that's just what I visualized. And it made me laugh. But he didn't, and I'm glad. I don't know how the alien would have reacted to that, because technically that's not a sound. So I don't know, but it was good. For a second there, I thought it was eggs.
Yeah, it kind of gave the impression maybe they're bringing people back here and they're turning to these aliens. They're eggs, they're reproducing.
They're breeding, yeah.
Maybe it's one of these drip-fed moments that I was mentioning, just giving some kind of strange level of texture to these critters. I didn't like it very much, but we were in and out pretty quick, and it didn't matter. It maybe helps retroactively build texture for John's trilogy of films.
Yes, but we can't forget why Eric went there in the first place. To rescue Frodo, this creature that means so much to Sam. And Sam's in a church dying, so Frodo, being the support animal he is, he knew how significant Frodo coming back home was. The cinematography in this movie was amazing. This movie looked amazing. I don't understand why people are so mad about movies being filmed in New York, because it's such a beautiful city to film. It looks beautiful on camera. New York is so colorful. But then we destroyed it, and New York looks even more awesome destroyed on camera. It's like those buildings in The Last of Us where they've
been totally reclaimed.
Yeah, exactly. Here, they got taken over by people abandoning them. Patsy's place got burned because I'm sure someone got, and the pizza was left in the oven, and it just burned.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. I'm not sure how this works, if this was actually mainly filmed in New York, or if a lot of sets had to be designed for this.
It wasn't.
Okay.
It was filmed almost entirely in London.
Oh, okay, cool. But it's still an awesome city.
Yeah, we just need the illusion.
Right. Really, those taxis. I mean, come on. Those look awesome. I loved all the smoke in the movie. It really helped create this chaos and just made the aliens look super creepy, because there were several moments where the aliens were just in the background, and if you weren't really paying attention, you could miss them. I mean, no one like went, oh, there's an alien or anything. Like, you just saw their kind of silhouette hidden in the smoke, just walking.
Yeah, they were never front and center. They were always the backdrop. Even in moments of total terror when Sam was sleeping and she dreamt of the alien, and that was a good jump scare. I know I got you.
That got me so good.
Which only solidifies my theory on them representing the pain. She's dreaming about the pain. New York looked almost like a Limbo type situation, like a Silent Hill, foggy, covered in cement snow. And especially when we had that moment of all those people entering the streets, just walking.
That was crazy. That was almost like a Walking Dead.
Yeah. Think about it.
Yeah.
It literally is a Walking Dead situation. These people are all in limbo. Yet she's going against the current. She's not ready to die. She hasn't accepted her fate.
Genius,
and
Michael.
I love it too because contextually it becomes this growing tension of people creating a stampede. Even though they're walking, it's starting to create this rumble. You know, there's such little space in between people that they're walking through glass, over metal, against cars. They're creating noise.
Yeah, that's where I thought Frodo was going to get got if he was going to get got. I thought he was going to get squished.
Yeah, I thought the cat was a goner. At some point, I was like, this cat is not making it out of this. I couldn't believe he got through all this. He needs an Oscar.
He does need an Oscar.
What do you think about while everybody was inside, when Sam was inside, you know, the helicopters would come by, and then a few seconds later, you would just hear this herd of the aliens on the roofs inside of buildings.
That was awesome. We didn't even need to see it, and I visualized them. I visualized them jumping, trying to get at the helicopters. Maybe the helicopters maneuvering, like, oh shit, one got too close, you know? I mean, it was so awesome. That sound design is incredible. You don't need sets and costumes and makeup to build the world here. Ironically, you needed sound.
Well said.
Minor thing. Why did we give Sam an iPod Nano? And why was that bar so outdated that she managed to find a charger? Because this movie is supposed to be taking place in 2020, right? Because in A Quiet Place, the first film, the little boy dies in 2020 because we see his tombstone, his little cross that said like 2016 to 2020. And that happened when we were 89 days in. So I guess depending on when he died in 2020, it was either late 2019 or early 2020. Because I saw a review on this comment about how the iPod really took her, the reviewer, back in time, and she thought this movie took place in the early 2000s. But I don't think that's right. Unless this is just a continuity error, but I don't think so.
No, there's definitely not a continuity error like that. Yeah, I think that kid died in 2020 in the first one, at the very beginning of the first one. And this obviously takes place, you know, a few months before that incident. And I'm sure there were lots of cars that we didn't notice that were from, you know, the modern era and stuff, and not just the early 2000s. And Alex Wolff's hairstyle and getup and everything were very modern, right? They weren't early 2000s. Yeah. So I guess maybe you have to assume that, you know, that bar is run by a bunch of old guys. They're stuck in their old ways because they just love old technology. And
having an emotional support animal is
a
very modern thing, especially a cat. I could see a dog before a cat. So why the iPod? Maybe they couldn't have cell phones in hospice? I don't know.
Well, because this movie's so symbolically charged, there's probably something to that. Especially because it becomes a little bit of a centerpiece. And I thought it was really neat that they incorporated the trailer song as the song that she was listening to at the very end.
Was that the trailer song?
Yeah.
Oh. I love this whole movie. I don't have a favorite scene because they're all my favorite scene. It is all my favorite. But that ending just got to me. And the pacing in the movie was great, by the way. The story was told. It didn't slow down or speed up. It got to the point. It made you feel your feels. It almost felt too short, but it wasn't. It was perfect. I was very surprised how perfect the pacing was. Every scene was important. The ending was such a bittersweet moment. I don't know what point the tears started falling, but this was the most beautiful friendship story and sacrifice story that I've ever seen. She faced her fears and she controlled her own death, even if it was by the aliens, and she helped someone survive. I don't know why that felt more powerful than the first film when you have a dad sacrificing himself for his kids. But maybe it was because a dad has to.
Bless the dads.
Bless the dads. I know my dad would in a heartbeat. But no one had to do this here. It's that human connection because, like they say, you know, your friends are your chosen family. That's who you decided to spend your time with, not kind of forced to spend your time with. So it's almost more powerful in that way. But I was completely enamored with the ending. And then the song dropped.
And then you were bawling.
Then I was bawling, and then I had to quickly wipe away my tears.
So no one could see.
So no one could see. And then I was like, did anybody else cry? Was that just me?
Are you crying?
And my face was all puffy and my eyes were red.
Her inevitable death had last-minute meaning, contextually. She came to terms with her severely unfair hand. And she didn't have to have death come knocking on her door. She went to death's door and said, I'm ready. Well, man, thank you for watching this movie with me and talking about it here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming to the movies with me.
You're welcome. Is it fair for me to say that Alex Wolff is one of my favorite actors? Because he's in several of my favorite movies? Is that how it works? Is he one of my favorites by default?
That's funny. That's funny. I don't know. Maybe.
And did you catch that Joseph Quinn, the guy who played Eric, is Eddie from Stranger Things?
Yes, I was trying to place him the whole movie until I saw his wiki. I was like, oh, that's right, Eddie. Which he's one of my favorite characters in Stranger Things.
He's the best part of the recent season.
Yeah.
Well, do you have a budget guess for me?
My budget guess is $75 million. Looked expensive, but not, 100 mil expensive. And I think A Quiet Place 2 was 60 mil, so I just bumped it up a little.
That's a very good guess. It says here that it's 67 million.
Ooh.
And so far it's gone on to make $103 million.
Ooh.
About a week on the market. It should be A-okay when everything is said and done over the next few weeks. So no reason to worry about a part 3 not ever happening, like our poor Mad Max franchise.
Yeah, if you didn't get it the first time around, that's okay. Go watch it again.
Well, over on Letterboxd with 137,000 people, they weighed in at a 3.4.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty low, I think.
You think so?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good for, well, you're right, because Letterboxd tends to inflate things.
This should be like a 3.9 on Letterboxd.
Yes. It's a 4 for me. Very solid 4.
Yeah, this is definitely a solid 3.5 and maybe massaged upward over time. Definitely a movie I need to sit on for the weeks to come. All right, man. Well, thank you for talking about this movie here today. And thank you guys for listening to this episode of The Filmistines. Remember, we post every Monday and Friday on free feeds and every other Wednesday on Patreon for Patreon exclusive episodes. On patreon.com/Filmistines, Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Our next episode will be covering Steven Spielberg's 2005 film, I believe, War of the Worlds.
An oldie but a goodie.
We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen it.
It's got Tom Cruise.
Love it already.
Dakota Fanning from The Watchers. So join us on that episode. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe. Come request a movie. Come write in. Go rate us on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives in the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines, and follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmistines signing off.